Welcome to Chapter 7 of the Adquio Web Interface course. This time, we are going to see the scripts in Adquio. Scripts are used within Adquio to do all kinds of automation programming. As always, we start with the main page that appears when we connect to an Adquio, and before anything else, to mention that everything that we are going to see in this class can be found in the Adquio help, okay? Well, to access the main part of Adquio programming, and I say main part, because we have here a specific option of scripts, but as we have already mentioned in previous chapters, we also have programming in the part of scheduled events, and in the part of periodic events, as you may recall. Very good, well we are going to go to the scripts option, and we are going to see examples. As you already know, we will dedicate a complete module of classes to programming, both basic programming, and advanced programming. Therefore, what we are going to see in this case are the keys to programming in Adquio. We are going to enter the first script that we have here, and we are going to see several things. First, how Adquio does to manage events. In this case, we have two events, and it does it this way, okay? Add listener, okay. That you know that this, we do not have to know that, we can find it in the help, simply, if we go here. And, here in help, we put events, that code that I was using, we have it here directly. If you see it, we could copy it from here. For example, once we have seen that this text, to program an event, we can bring it directly from the help, we are going to study how it works. The first thing, we want it to be a variable value change event. In this case, it's called like that, okay? In addition to variable change, we have another one, that is variable state, state of the variable. In this case, we want to connect to a variable change event type of the I/O device, which are the inputs and outputs integrated in Adquio, and specifically, we want the variable AI01, which is analog input 01, the analog input number 1 of Adquio. Well, let us know then that, as we are hooking ourselves to the change of a variable, the content of that variable will remain in the variable EV, which are the initials of event value, okay? We are not going to see, at the moment, this, simply that, we see that here, we have another event in the same way, but, that instead of reading from the I/O device, we are reading from the device called vars, and, we are monitoring the pair quality variable, okay. Very well, we are going to see within this code, then, something else that may interest us in the initiation part. Let's see then, here, we have an example of how the Adquio reads from a device. In this case, we are loading a constant, which, we will see in the advanced programming part, we are loading a constant called equality value, we are loading it with, what we are reading devices.read from the I/O device and the AI01 variable, which curiously as you can see, it is the same one, we had up here. Okay, so, to read a value from a device, simply, devices.read, device name, name of the variable we want to read, okay? Let's see how it is written, and here below we have a very clear example, devices.write, device name, name of the variable we want to write, AO01, analog output 01, and we want to save the content of this variable in this variable of the device. Okay, so, in this example, we have seen how events work, how to hook into a change event of a variable. In this case, we have it twice, and we have seen how to read and how to write a variable to a device. As you can see, all the code we have here is JavaScript, and it is super simple JavaScript syntax. In this case, we have a definition of constants, which brings the value of a device, definition of variables, and zeroing, an if which tells us, if one variable is less than another, then, what we want to do, between braces, this key starts here. And, ends here, okay? It does an operation, it calculates a variable, based on the subtraction of two others, it calculates a variable based on the sum of two others, and it checks again, if it is greater than 100 then, it sets a variable to 100. Well, we will see this in detail. Keep in mind that to start programming Adquio, you must have a basic JavaScript base, okay, of JavaScript syntax. Therefore, we are not going to exactly go into the syntax of all the commands either. Very well, we remember that in the lower part, we had already seen it, we have a log of this script, okay? Every time it was executed, if there was an error, or a message that we have put, it appears below. We left without saving. Let's see another example. In this case, how to launch a dirty filter alert. Alright, let's see it in detail. As you can see, we have the same piece of code again. In this piece of code, you can copy and paste it whenever we want to manage the change of a variable. In this case, the variable pressure underscore difference of the VAR's device will be managed, okay? We will be left with the result of that pressure difference in EV. Alright, here the procedure begins then. We open with this key, we close with this one down here, and we check if the EV, event value, that is what is the pressure difference, okay? We saw in the previous example that this manages the change of a variable. We indicate which device, which variable, and in EV, we have the variable that we are monitoring. So, with new value, we get the new value of that variable. If instead of new value, we put old value, we would be obtaining the value before the change of that variable. That way, we can know both the original value and the value after that change. So, we are seeing if the current value of that variable, after the change, is greater than a value that we have from the dirty filter configuration, and then, we are going to see a new command which we had not seen yet, which is write future. What is the difference between a devices.write and a devices.write future? The difference is that, if we are writing to a device, for example, Ethernet, we can always use devices.write, because the writing can be immediate. But, be careful, if we are writing to a device we are reaching through a bus that can be slow, we will always use devices.write future. Why? Because this will allow us to postpone this writing until it is possible to do. By this I mean if this variable belongs to a Modbus device, it may not be possible to write it immediately, because there are already other previous writes that are still pending due to the speed of the bus. So, what I would do, is put it in the queue to get done when possible. As you can see, in all these cases, it is being done like this, with a write future, and, at the bottom, we have, how to launch an alert. We will see, when we see alerts, exactly, how this is done. We see that we put a type, condition formula, and, the pressure difference is too high, clean filter. This is the message that is being sent in the alert, okay? I already tell you that, we will see it in detail. Okay, let's see if we find any additional scripts where we can learn something more basic. Yes, in this case, we can see this. Remember that we mentioned before that here, at the bottom, we see the log of this script, the messages that this script was giving. This is how we can send messages to that log. Logger.info, the variable we want, the message we want. We can compose them with texts, with variables, etc., okay? In this case, we are doing a logger.info. But logger, if we use it, we are going to make a small change here for a moment and exit without saving. Let's suppose that, I don't know, what options logger has. In this case, we see that logger.info is being used, so let's put logger here. And, what possibilities will logger have, in addition to info? Well, another important part of programming in Adquio is that we always have a help here, where we can easily search for the logger, and it tells me that, apart from the info I'm using, we also have logger.debug, logger.error and logger.warn. Well, this is just an example. We close this. Well, let's see one more thing. In this script, we have the event that I mentioned earlier. Until now, we have seen variable value change events, and in this case, we have a very clear example of a variable state change event. A variable changes state when the device to which it belongs changes state. In this case, it is a screen to which we have to update the values. In this case, it is called screen 3.5, and the variable is identification. What interests us, in this case, is this variable status change, which is documented in this case, can have the values working. Out of service. Init and stopped. In this case, we are doing that if this event had said that EV brought us the value of the variable that we are monitoring. So, in this case, EV new status. Do you remember that in the previous case, here we had new value? Okay, well, in this case it's new status. If the new state is working, which is that it is working, or the state is init, which is that it is being initialized, then it does a screen update, which is that it sends all the values to the screen. But hey, this has already been done. We will see. So, simply that, we know this, that there are two main events that we have when programming Adquio. One is the control of change of variables, and the other is the control of change of state of devices, and therefore, of their variables. So, in this case, what we are doing finally, is that if this screen was in the out-of-service state, or in the stopped state, at the time it changes, if the new state is working or in it, all its values are updated. Let's say that, if we start it now, the moment it detects it as already active, it updates all the values, so that they are displayed correctly on the screen, right? So, we have already seen a second type of event that may interest us on many occasions. Very well, we are leaving here, and we are going to see something else, that is usually done quite regularly, because it usually happens to us on many occasions. Let's see this other event, as an example. In this case, we are going to see a script that has to manage multiple variables that affect it. On this occasion, we have to do the same. If the return temperature is changed, if the operating mode changes from manual to automatic, if the valve state changes, or when the state of a variable, where a parameter is set, changes. On this occasion, what is done is, we are going to make it small, so that everything can be seen, program 1, 2, 3, 4 events, and that they all call the same function. In this case, the function is called post-heating battery monitoring. Well, as you can see, all events call exactly the same function, okay. And here too. So, with this we get that if this happens, or this, or this, or this, the same procedure is always executed, and we do not have to program this in each one. A small disadvantage that it is that the variable that it provides us, in this case, as each one is going to be different, and we do not use it. What is more, it is warning us here that we are not using it. What we have to do in this function is to locate all of them. So, the first thing the function does when it enters, if you look at it, is read them, read the mode, read the return temperature, and so on. In any case, even so, because of the work that it costs us to read 4 variables of the devices, it is not worth programming this separately. Therefore, we create the events, we make them call the same function, and, in this way, we cover all the possibilities of this type of control in a single programming block. Also remind you that, in Adquio, the reading of variables is a super fast and super efficient process, because really, when we have a variable from a device, we are not reading it from the device, but we are reading it from the read cache of that device. So, this is always immediate, right? Very good. Well, with this, we have essentially seen where the scripts are programmed, we have seen how to manage events, we have seen how to access variables, both in reading and writing, we have seen how to use help to copy pieces of code, and in this way, we do not have to learn, let's say, which pieces are, or can be more complex initially, and we have seen how to use contextual help to help us know the properties or methods of many of the objects that we can use in our programming. With this, we close this chapter on scripting in Adquio, reminding you, once again, that we will dedicate Module 2 of this course entirely to programming. See you at the next one.